I want to start out by reading a passage of scripture in John chapter 11. The interesting thing in John chapter 11 is Jesus was told of a friend of his that had passed away or was sick, and in fact he had died. And Jesus was a ways away from where this has happened, and so the news came he was sick. And where I want to pick up the story is verse 17, because I want to keep with the theme kind of that we are getting back to basics. One of the things that I think that I said last Sunday that's important for us to be reminded of, sometimes we can be inundated by so much stuff that we almost lose the basics of things, and we get caught up in a lot of the big things. Often when we get sidetracked by the big things, we lose sight of the nuts and bolts of stuff. And so last week I talked about Jesus and how compassion motivates and moves. And sometimes we can forget those little things that have the deepest impact in people's lives. And so we want to kind of do the same thing this morning, pull back the curtain a little bit and get back to some real basic stuff that really, when you stop and think of it, when you really process it, the basic stuff has tremendous implications and power of transformation, and I don't want us to lose some of that, the fundamental basic things. And so in John chapter 11, I titled my message this morning, Never Late, Always on Time. Have you ever felt like everything that comes your way is always late? You just wish it would have been here like 3 weeks ago, or you know, I'm bad for getting things in the mail. You know, when I order something from the mail, I like to track it because I like to see where it is and when it's going to come, and I can get ready for it, and then it doesn't show up. And 6 months ago, I applied for my veterans card. Now, the federal government figured they wanted to bring out, to distinguish our veterans and have a nice veterans identification card of your service and all this kind of stuff. And they did it in phases. The first phase was the people that released from the military between, I think, 2018. And then the second phase was, I think, 2000 and I don't know what. I was on the third phase. And so I was anticipating when I could apply for my veteran card. And so I waited. It was several months. And all of a sudden I got an email that said, now I can apply. So I applied. I filled out everything needed to be done. And they said, because you've had everything in order and all the paperwork you needed, it'd probably be 4 to 5 weeks. Well, I'm still waiting for it. And I remember going to the mail going, I don't know why it was important to me. Maybe it's because of what I did and what I contributed, maybe. I don't know. But it was important to me to have that card. And I remember I thought, at least if I could get it before we go to Arizona, and that was before March, before everything started shutting down, and because we get deals in Arizona you're a veteran. I thought, this is just great, I don't have to wait in line to get on an airplane if I fly out of the States, because veterans get priority boarding. And I remember leaning over to my wife going, see, it's worth being married to a veteran. We get priority board and we don't have to pay for it. There's a lot of different things, and so I was looking forward to that. Well, it came and went, no card. I remember going to the mail, it's got to be today. And it's just like a little kid at Christmas time. I don't know, I'm checking the mail all the time, and nope. And I'm still waiting for it. Government, everything's late, never early, right? No. The reason I titled my message, Never Late, Always on Time, is because sometimes we can carry that perspective when it comes to God, because especially if we're going through stuff, we need a miracle. We need something to shift. We need to have clarity, and sometimes that clarity doesn't come. And I've been there too, where I wondered, God, are you really watching? Are you really paying attention? Look, I needed this a while ago, and it's still not here. And so sometimes we can struggle with wondering if God's timing is just off. So I thought it would be interesting to go back and pull back the curtain and touch some of the very basic stuff. And I realize that God is never late and always on time. You see, We want people to adjust to us. But sometimes the circumstances and what's happening, we need to work through the process. And we have to allow the timing to God. So never late, always on time. And in John chapter 11, verse 17, Jesus hears of his friend that has now just passed away. And he heads down to where the family are. In verse 17, it says, when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in the grave for 4 days. He was late. Not on time. So we think. So he had already been dead in the grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Mary got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. But Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, listen to what she says, Lord, if only you would have been here sooner, my brother would not have died. Translate that now into today's lingo. You're late. If you would have came a little bit earlier, my brother wouldn't have died. I can hear in with my ear a little bit of disappointment. Can't you read that? Lord, if you only would have been here sooner, my brother would not have died. And then she says in verse 22, but even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. Never late, always on time. There's always events in life that can lead to disappointment or us questioning what really is going on. Why? Did I do something wrong? Have you ever felt that way? Maybe it's something I did. I've often said many times in my own life, this came at the worst time. I mean, if all places and all things, it shouldn't have happened now. It could have happened later on or earlier. Now is just not the time. You ever feel like God's late or just picked the time for doing something to happen when we're just not ready for it? There's 3 things that I think will help us process this idea that God is never late and always on time. See, when we settle that issue, then we're okay with what happens. Not okay, but we're resting, knowing that he's got things in his hand. 3 things that I think are important to pull out of this whole idea of never late, always on time. The first thing that I want to mention here from this context and from what we've been talking about is, first of all, we don't always understand, but we can always learn to trust. We can't always understand. Man, if we could understand everything, then we would have an infinite mind that we could just process everything and life would just be wonderful. But we don't always understand. And when we don't understand, that's when we start rattling. That's when we start fraying. That's when we start questioning and going through all these emotions in our life because we don't understand. I'm sure most of you don't like when you don't know an answer to a problem or you don't understand the concept. I can spend hours pacing the floor trying to figure something out and it just doesn't compute. We're not always going to understand, but we can learn to trust. I remember a friend of mine, a mentor of mine from years ago who lost his wife and of probably 60 some years. And I phoned him up one time and said, "How are you doing?" And he says, "You know what? When I don't understand, I have to learn to trust." Because he too was trying to figure that out. Was it bad timing? We don't always understand, but we have to learn to trust. Mary didn't understand the fact that Jesus even knew beforehand that Lazarus was going to die. She didn't know that. It happened he was in the grave 4 days. It's like, wow, are you ever late? I want to say this morning, and it's important for us to understand that I wrote this down. It says this: God doesn't always prevent bad things from happening, but he does give us what we need to carry us through to the other side. You see, the carrying through to the other side part sometimes is where we wrestle. How do we work through grief? How do we work through disappointment? How do we work through despair or discouragement? The wonderful D's that are so prevalent in our life at times when things don't go well. How do we process that through? Because God doesn't always prevent them from happening, but He does give us what we need to carry us through it, that we can thrive on the other side. Sometimes it's in the little things. Sometimes the little things. It's the encouragement at the right time. It's a word from somebody, or you're doing something that's nothing related, and a little thing pops up, and it's what you need to help you keep on carrying. And I don't want to miss those, folks, because those little things add up to big things. When I neglect the little stuff that happens, those little tidbits, I want to put those in my bank account because I'm going to draw interest on them later. We want the big payout, but we're not willing to save the $15 a month or the $20 a month. Me and my sister, we had it out so many times growing up. Like, she was like, it was taking money from her was like pulling teeth. You had to pin her down, and my money was gone. Hers, allowance came along, I went shopping, it was all gone, and 5 days later, allowance, she still had what are you doing with all your money? They give it to you to spend. Just save. But man, I was the first to go to her to say, hey, can I borrow $10? You see, I loved the payout, but I don't like the saving part of it. God doesn't always prevent bad things from happening, but He does give us what we need to carry us through. We've got to learn to celebrate the little things. Little things. We can recognize the big things, but do we recognize the little things? God gives us what we need to carry us through. Sometimes in the little things. David said this in Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is a powerful psalm, but he says something there. He says, even though, I think it's verse 4, he said, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I know not everything is going to go well. I know there's going to be things that I'm going to have to push through. I know there's going to be circumstances that are out of my control that force me to have to navigate and work through. He says, even though he recognizes that it is possible. Part of the battle is I don't want to recognize that it's possible. I just want to have everything go the way I want it to go, and then there will be no problems. But he says, even though I go through the darkest valley, he says, I will fear nothing bad because you are with me. You see, he understood the concept that God being with him, present in every circumstances, was enough for him to not only go through, but to thrive in the end of it. That's why he says, even though it's okay, I can handle that, I'll work that through because you're with me. I want to tell you this morning that God is with you no matter what you do, decisions you make. He's not offended by us. He's bigger than offense. He's bigger than our own misconceptions of even who he is. He's bigger than that stuff. And he is with us. Man, that's an amazing concept. I can royally screw up and he's still with me. It's like, wow. That doesn't mean I'm going to go royally screw up. But the concept is he's always with us. Through thick and through thin. Proverbs chapter 4 uses this word. He says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because he knows that's the foundation that's unshakable. We got to learn to shift our trust to him, not in favorable circumstances. Because like I said, we don't always understand, but we can learn. But we can learn to trust. Trust is a powerful concept. It speaks more than just confidence. It speaks about you're willing to take the risk even though you don't know what it's going to happen. That's what trust is. I'm going to tell you this morning, God is trustworthy no matter where you're at in life. You could be going through grief. You could be going through questions. You can be going through stuff. He is trustworthy. You see, that's just getting back to the basics. You find yourself in a financial crutch, he is trustworthy. You're safe with him. He may not control what's happening, but you can trust him. Martha, if only you would have been here sooner, my brother wouldn't have died. I'm sure Jesus on the inside says, listen, death has no sting. I'm going to carry you through and see a great miracle. There's a second thing that I want to pull out of this passage that's just as important, I think, is it's almost, when we read further, in verse 23, Jesus speaks and he says, hey, listen, Mary, or Martha, your brother will rise again. This is not the end. It's not the end. And then verse 24 says, yes, Martha said, he will rise again with everyone else in the last days. And Jesus said, no, listen, you're missing it. It's even simpler than that. I am the resurrection and the life. I'm right here. I am that. It's not something you're waiting for. It is present now. Wow. Remember I said, the Bible is never to be used as a theological book or to prove right or wrong or who's right or wrong, but rather the Bible reveals the heart of God. He's revealing a part of him. No, Martha, you don't understand. Yes, that too will happen, but you understand, I am it. I am do you need things in your life resurrected? Do you need things in your life that have been maybe locked up in seemingly like a grave and wondering if that'll ever open up? I want to speak to you this morning. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. He is. That talent, those dreams that you have back in your mind, you've often wondered, just like when am I getting my veteran card? Those things locked up way back, maybe things have been spoken over your life years and years and years ago, and you don't know how in the world it's ever going to come to pass. I want to tell you, Jesus is the resurrection and the life to those things. Never stop dreaming. Never stop believing. He's the resurrection, and please breathe life into it. That's hopeful. Second thing I want to say about this never late, always on time, when we're working through things in our life, I want to say this. It's important to say this. It's okay to question. It's okay to question. It shows that we're normal. Why? It's okay to question. Some people know, I don't want to ever question. You're denying the emotions that God's given you. It's when we ask the questions and begin to wonder where God comes into those areas, because he's the resurrection of life, and clarity starts coming. But it's okay to question. It's okay to wonder. It's okay to process and work through it in your mind. And Martha did. I'm sure, Martha, where's Jesus? We sent word that my brother was sick, and we know that our brother meant so much to Jesus. Why isn't he here? Day one. Bethany to Jerusalem is only a few miles away. Like, what's the holdup? Is there a train or traffic problems? No, there was none of those things then. Day two. Can you imagine? Are you sure you told him? Day three. You didn't tell him. You guys missed the boat. If you would have been day four, does he even care? You're in the midst of grief, flooded with emotions. I'm sure she questioned. Either they didn't tell him, or Jesus is just simply ignoring the issue. Then Jesus shows up. Lord, if only you would have been here sooner, we wouldn't have been in this predicament. And Jesus says, I am the predicament mender and maker. I bring life to things that are dead. I resurrect things that have been buried for years. I am your hope. Trust me, and you will see what only I can see. It's okay to question. It's okay to question. It's not good to stay there and go around the mountain many, many times, but it's okay. Because God is big enough to handle our questions. Listen to this. There's a passage in, I'm not even sure where it is. It's just coming to my mind, but he says in Jeremiah 29, I believe, that he gives grace to the weary and increases power to the weak. Even though young men, we all want to be young women, young men, grow tired and weary and stumble and fall, they that hope in the Lord renew their strength, resurrection, and life. That's who Jesus is. He's not afraid of our questions. He's not afraid of our process. He's not afraid of our working through things, because that's all part of life, and we got to navigate and learn and grow, and those things help us to dig and learn. But when we trust God in the midst of whatever we're facing and going through, even though we have questions, we don't understand why, or why is it should have been a lot sooner. Why it's 4 days ago. Well, you're delayed. If you would have just came a little earlier, we could have had a celebration, and now we're mourning. And Jesus says, no, I bring celebration wherever I go. I bring joy wherever I go. There's a third thing that helps us understand that God is never late and always on time. Is the third thing is we need to purpose. We need to purpose to find the rose in the midst of the thorns. We have two or three rose bushes. 3. And at first they look ugly. I've been cutting grass, and I come alongside those thorns. I feels like I've been attacked. They're just everywhere. And as soon as you touch them, then they're there. It's like, and if all we focus on is the thorns that have poked us and stabbed our fingers. And in Arizona, we have cactuses, and in front of our place, we had a small cactus, and it looked ugly. They grow weird and, big things. And to me, I drive by and it looks terrible, and I thought, I'm going to cut it down. Well, the cactus leaves, they're not leaves, they're like meat. And they're heavy. You don't think so. But I cut one off, and it fell straight into my foot, and it stabbed me. And then, of course, what do? Well, that's crazy. I was red in my hands and my feet, and I felt helpless in one sense, because no matter what I touched, and they get in there. And you can't see them, but when you pick something up, it's like, oh. And you're sitting there under the light in the bathroom looking and trying to find those thorns, because that's the most evident thing that gets affected. But if we want to look for the roses, we have to always look higher. You have to look higher. Every rose has its thorns, but the beauty is not in the thorns. Every rose has its thorns. I'll stop right there. But sometimes we just see the thorns and we don't see the beautiful rose that's on top of it. How can something so magnificent and wonderful come from something like that? Because he's the resurrection and the life. When we're going through our life, we're going to have to purpose. We're going to have to purpose to look for the roses that are on top of the plants. Our life can be covered with all kinds of stuff, but I'm looking at a group of people that are filled with roses. If you just stop and take a look, you will see how creative God is in your circumstances, and how innovative he is, and how he's committed to carrying you through those very ideas. Never late, always on time. When Jesus arrived, it was like he was told, you know what? Your friend is buried 4 days ago. You're late. Martha, listen, Bethany and Jerusalem only a few miles away. Could you not hurry it up a little bit? Like it's just a couple of miles. But now you've come 4 days late. You missed the funeral. You missed all the stuff, and now you just got mourning. You're late. The moment I start believing that God is no longer late but always on time, I get to readjust how I see things. Because what God did in this circumstances had to happen the way it did, because the story doesn't end. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and life. Anyone who believes me, even after dying, anyone whose lives in me, believes in me, will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord. Skipping down a few verses, he goes down and he says, take me to the grave. Take me to the grave. They take him to the grave. And Jesus looks at the grave and says, roll the stone away. What are you talking about? He's already been in there 4 days. It's over. You see, Jesus never sees what we see. Roll the stone away. So he rolls the stone away. Then he says this, Lazarus, probably more, Lazarus, come out. And all of a sudden, what was dead came back to life. I'm telling you folks, that is the same Jesus we serve today. He rolls the stone away of impossibility. He rolls the stone away of the things that have been spoken of ours. He rolls the stone away of things that have been proclaimed and is underlined and said, that's it, that's who you are. He rolls the stone away and he looks into what seems to be lifeless stench and says, you that have been hidden for so many years, you that have been suppressed for so many years, you that have struggled for so many, you come forth. And we come forth because what was dead, he brings back to life. I don't know about you, but I want to live with that reality every day of my life. The Jesus that's here, right here, I've got to learn. I don't have to understand. I can trust. I may have questions and work through things in my mind, but he is the one that has the answers to everything. And he's never late. He's always on time. I know we read further, there's a celebration. They took the grave clothes off of Lazarus and had a feast and celebrated because what was dead is now alive. And I'm speaking to you that this morning. What was dead in your life, I speak alive. Resurrection. You know, Paul says, and I'll close at this because, man, I can really give her right now. He says, I want to know Christ. So Paul says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection. Why does he want to know that? Because he knows the power of the resurrection is able to bring life to whatever's dead in me and around me. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection. I'm telling you, that's a reality we walk and live in today. No excuses. This is just the way I am. No, he's the resurrection and the life. I just can't get past. This is all I've heard all my life. No, we can get past that. I've been told this all my life. We can get past that because he's the resurrection life. He breathes into life that we have been spoken death. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for examples in the scriptures. And God, I just want to thank you for the life that we have in you. Oh God, make it alive. I pray that our impossibilities would no longer be impossibilities. They would become possibilities. So much hope would rise up in the middle of us because we see you are so much bigger than everything around us. Oh God, thank you. In Jesus' name.
Hey, thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss a single video or podcast, and share these videos with a friend. And don't forget, you can join us live every Sunday.